Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 61 of the Rock Podcast for those about to pod. We salute you. In this episode, we've reached the letter N in the A to Z of rock. There's new rock on the block, there's hidden gems, and of course, the latest rock news in What's Caught Your Eye, Bry. And talking of Bry, there he is. The man himself, the man who occasionally wears a Angus Young schoolboy outfit. But don't tell anyone, it's Brian. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well. I see you've got back safely from Leicestershire.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I was there at the weekend. Last weekend, went to see Thieves of Liberty open for the Karma Effect.
Oh.
Yeah, a bit of a road trip. It's quite nice, actually. A weekend away and all that. My wife and I went with our friend Richard and a few friends there. So, yeah, it's good.
And how were the Karma Effect? Were they good?
They were great. They were sounding great. The songs off the new album sounds good. Promised Land, which is out in May. Looking forward to that. No doubt we'll review that when it comes out. And yeah, good gig, all in all. Yeah, really enjoyed it. Caught up with the lads afterwards, and they're in good form. So yeah, all good. You enjoyed that. And a week before that, I saw Dirty Honey. They were good. But, so it's been a busy couple of weeks. And then I saw Jack J. Hutchinson on his album launch, his new album Battles. Yeah, we'll come on to that later in New Rock on the Block. But yeah, it's been a busy and slightly tiring couple of weeks.
And if you'd added up all of the cost of all of those 3 gigs, it will come nowhere near the price of the tickets for the band that we thought that we would never see again. AC/DC have announced the 21-date tour of Europe, which, of course, Matthew, the tour of the UK is
2 nights in London. Yeah, lovely. I know it's more like a German tour with a few dates around the rest of Italy, around the rest of Europe, kind of tacked on. But yeah, it's very stressful getting tickets for AC/DC, of course, and we managed it. My wife came up trumps actually, which is pretty good. I was online with a few friends. You as well were online, weren't you? Of course, trying to get tickets for Dublin.
Yeah.
Did you get them or not?
No, I think I refreshed my phone once, Matthew. I think I was 26,000 in the queue, and then I refreshed my phone, and then I went to like 52,000 in the list. So by the time I got there, it's a classic case of no standing left, but you can get the VIP tickets for like €400 or whatever it was. Yeah. I mean, astronomical prices. I don't know where I'm going to say blame, because it is really, I mean, unbelievable prices. I know they're a hugely popular band. This is probably their last tour. I'm sure they'll put some dates in the US and maybe South America and so on. But I mean, just astronomical prices, as you touched upon, for essentially, you got Brian Johnson and Angus, you got Stevie Young, you got Matt Laug. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it, playing drums, and Chris Chaney has been formerly of Jane's Addiction and many others, has been drafted in on bass because Cliff Williams has decided, well, stuck to his guns actually. He did the one-off gig in the what was it called? That festival? Was that called Power Up Festival? Power Trip Festival. Very confusing, isn't it? All this power floating around. Yeah, he stuck to his guns, did that one gig, and he's called it a day, which I think is fair enough. But yeah, I've got a tip for everyone listening. By the way, my wife, as I say, came up trumps with the AC/DC tickets, and if you recall, they went on sale at 10 o'clock on whatever date it was, February the 16th or something, and 10 o'clock UK time, and we were all poised at 10 a.m. Right, bang, let's get on. And there was a lobby, waiting room, whatever it was. Then you got let in, and you showed like number 50,000 in the queue. But my wife Kate, she was in the lobby at quarter to the hour, so which I think was good. So she kind of, got ahead of the curve, as it were. So anyway, yeah, we're going to see and see them in Wembley. I won't tell you how much, but yeah, as you say, I have to say I am more of an advocate of paying a relatively small amount of money to see up and coming bands. I think I've said this before. The Karma Effect and Thieves of Liberty were, I don't know, £20, something like that. Good, really good value. And as you say, you can see lots of up and coming bands. And to be fair, AC/DC don't need my, let's say, £100. They don't need, to be fair, with all due respect. Whereas, that sort of money would support a band, or petrol money, hotel, Airbnb, whatever it is. Anyway, enough of my soapbox ranting.
No. It's tough, and we don't know the machinations or how the algorithms work for dynamic pricing. But it's exactly the same now. Another behemoth band that's announced, a new album, which Eddie Vedder says is the best album that they've done. So Pearl Jam have announced a world tour. And they're going to be playing a few shows in the UK. But again, with the dynamic pricing, and I know that if Pearl Jam I've bought tickets before through the 10 Club. So if you're a member of the 10 Club, you can get, pre-sale links and codes and all that kind of stuff. But again, tickets for the Pearl Jam shows are, way beyond £100. And they've been staunch advocates of fair pricing, fair pricing over the years. So it's so it's kind of like, interesting that the band have, with their fans, and a lot of them on social media have been saying, I ain't paying 150 quid to go and see Pearl Jam.
No.
But I think it's just a sign of the times.
Could be. Yeah, it's a lot of money, isn't it? Especially this day and age when, people are finding it tough. And I was thinking that, actually. I mean, Alice Cooper has just announced a UK tour. And I'm thinking, to be fair, he's playing in London, he's playing Hammersmith, or Odeon, as we always refer to it. The Eventim Apollo, which would be quite a good gig, I think.
Yeah.
In a strange way, quite intimate, because normally he plays, the O2 in London and, large sort of indoor arenas. But I think that might be a tour too far, because, as I say, people are struggling these days. And as I say, you've been asked to pay, 60, 70, 100 plus pounds to watch a gig. It's a lot of money to fork out. Anyway, I'm sure someone will pay. I'm sure it'll be a sellout, but certainly Pearl Jam, well, I'm sure they're going to put on, as we said before, put on a great show. In other news, this one caught my eye, and I think you'd like this, Bri. Well, you certainly will like it. So there's a football team, a soccer team, for our American listeners, who have they're called Bohemian FC. It's a good name, actually, Bohemian Football Club. From Dublin in Ireland. So they have just announced a one-off football jersey. I think it's their away kit that pays homage. Is it homage or homage? Anyway, I think both are okay. Pays homage to Thin Lizzy's landmark outdoor concert in Dalymount Park in Dublin.
Dalymount.
Is it Daily? Is it Dalymount?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Apologies, Brian. Thank you for correcting me. In Dalymount Park in Dublin in August 1977. Did you go to that, by the way? Or you...
No, I didn't. I was a little bit too young man.
It's quite a nice top, actually. It's got the Thin Lizzy, the iconic logo, which has been sort of perpetuated by Dan Hawkins of the Darkness, of course, and then sort of stitched into the neck of the jersey. You might look into getting one of these. Actually, they've got the Some of the Boys Are Back in Town lyrics, and yeah, it's good. I like it. It looks good, actually. I could see you wearing that. I'm looking at it now. It's kind of purple neck and cuffs, and essentially a white football shirt. It was good.
Would you be surprised, Matthew,
Have you got one? Have you ordered one? Oh, come on.
Yes, I have.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, good. I look forward to seeing that next time. Oh, brilliant.
Yes, yeah. You know me. It's like, hey, Thin Lizzy have put out a new 15 CD box set. Oh, I've got to have it.
I know.
Football jersey. Oh, I've got to have it.
Yeah. No, it looks pretty good, actually. Yeah, why not?
It does. It does. Yeah. Yes. That was in the caught my eyebrow.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's put Bohemian FC. Are they the old? No, Bohemians was another football club, wasn't it? I think. But certainly put Bohemian FC of Dublin on the map, as it were.
Very much. Yeah. Very much.
Which is good. Which is good. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Bri. You like this time of year? It's kind of like a seasonal, landmark time for you, isn't it? You love the build up to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I do. Eddie Trunk, the well-known American radio host. He's brilliant. Because I think he's one of the. He has a ballot, so I love it.
Right.
when Iron Maiden haven't made the ballot this year, so I'm sure that Eddie's done an hour-long show going, this is preposterous. Why blah amount of bands aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So, it's gonna Iron Maiden snubbed once again. I think it's going to be interesting. One band that I think is going to be nailed on getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will be Foreigner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Foreigner. I'm a massive fan of. I think we both are massive fans of the Lou Gramm era. In terms of the recorded material, Kelly's done an amazing job. Mick Jones this week as well with the diagnosis of his Parkinson's and now backing away from playing live. Mark Ronson, who's his stepson, has been.
That's right.
He's been out sort of going, a play on the lyrics of "I Want to Know What Love Is." Do you know what love is? Getting Foreigner into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I can see Foreigner being they probably one that potentially could win the people's vote.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'd love to see them in. Other nominees, quite a good representation in the rock world. Ozzy Osbourne, who's already been inducted with Sabbath, of course, Black Sabbath. Peter Frampton, great Peter Frampton. Of course, Dave Matthews Band. You probably like a bit of Dave Matthews Band,
I do,
don't you,
actually. Yeah. I do like
Jane's Addiction and Lenny Kravitz. And we wish them all well. It does beg the question about Iron Maiden, though. I mean, they have been going since, I think it's Christmas, was it New Year's Eve, 1975? So coming up 50 odd years.
Yeah.
Obviously, they weren't quite the band they are now. Back in 1975, of course. But do you know what? In a way, I think they probably quite like the fact they haven't been nominated. And I've got a feeling if they ever are, they'll say, no, thanks. You waited so long, we've lost interest. And in fact, we weren't even interested in the first place. So thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Which, fair enough.
Yeah, and there's some, as you say, there's some great bands that are nominated. You mentioned Peter Frampton, and I'm kind of astounded he hasn't been nominated before. When you think of that, Frampton Comes Alive is probably one of the most iconic albums, and certainly it sold truckloads in America. But I look at the other nominees, and they're all great artists in their own right. But come on, Matt, Sade.
Oh, Sade, you mean?
Yes.
Shaddy. Sade.
Sade.
As in smooth operator.
Yes.
And all that. Your love is king.
Yes. You know too many Sade songs, Matthew.
Well, as we will find out later, I did grow up in the 80s. I was in my formative years in the 80s. Of course, that was a very eclectic era. And I do remember Diamond Life by Sade. It's quite a good album, actually, for like a bit of kind of laid-back Sunday morning jazz.
She played Live Aid. She played, she played that.
Yeah.
And she also, stick this on the playlist for this episode, she's actually covered Thin Lizzy's Still in Love with You.
Really?
She has.
Yeah, well, I'll dig that out. That sounds like could be good, actually.
Yeah.
She's got a beautiful voice, Sade.
Yeah.
But we are getting slightly off track. Let's save that for one of our many sister podcasts for those about to listen to Sunday Morning Jazz. We salute you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Another band that, another band that's announced. This is kind of a bit of a shock to the rock and thrash world. Is that and Slayer have reunited, and it was funny, Matthew, how I found out about it. Didn't find out about it on Planet Rock. Didn't find out about it on Loudwire, anything. I found out about it on the Friends of Stone Dead Festival when said Slayer has reunited, and yes, they will be the headliners.
Well, I would take that. To be honest with you, I would take that. I do have this lovely thought that there'll be a kind of middle-aged mosh pit in front of the stage, which I won't be participating in. But that sounds good, actually. I would love to see Slayer out there.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, no, it'd be fun. I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
You never know. So, Brian, do you remember many episodes ago? Mm-hmm. This is 61, episode 61, by the way.
It is indeed.
So many episodes ago, do you remember we had a very heated debate on who is the most iconic bass player ever? And you went for Lemmy, and I went for Paul McCartney. And I seem to quite have an interesting discussion.
And we're both wrong because it's Geddy Lee.
That's right. Or Tom Araya, if Slayer are coming back,
exactly,
possibly.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one. It's caught my eye because we've talked about Paul McCartney's bass in the context he sold one. Do you remember for like $400,000 or something?
Yeah.
But recently he has been reunited with his famous Hofner bass, which I think is synonymous with Paul McCartney in that era. It went missing in 1972.
Wow.
And it's only just been returned. It was stolen from the back of a van, obviously, not a very secure van, in Notting Hill in London, back in, let's say, 50 odd years ago. And no one knew where it was until there was a lost bass project looking for it. Anyway, it's turned up, amazingly. And it's in pretty good nick. Apparently it's worth in the region of £10 million, which I think is a possible underestimation based on some of the guitars or the value of some of the guitars that we've talked about on this podcast. But I'm quite pleased for Sir Paul, for Macca, getting his famous Hofner bass. And there's some pictures of it actually online. If you take a look, it does look like an antique. I mean, it's pretty battered. Mm-hmm. But it's it's good to see that iconic. I think it is an iconic instrument.
Oh, very much.
Is back with Paul McCartney after all these years. He probably forgotten about it actually.
No. This is you're right to call out the lost, the bass project, because it has been. It's been one of those. I wonder where it is now, and he's long lamented the loss of that bass guitar. So it's it's fabulous. There is one. See in the next episode, if it's when we talk about auctions, something which will be going for less than £10 million will be Peter Grant. So Peter Grant's estate,
that's right.
They're auctioning off all his classic cars, and I think he's got, it's like a Ferrari of Peter Grant's is going to be sold, and it's the classic case, Matt, where they're going, and the estimated sales going to be between 250 and 350 grand, and you're kind of going, the fact that it's Peter Grant and it's Led Zeppelin, that's going to be up. That's going to be stratospheric.
Absolutely.
for a Ferrari owned by the legendary manager Lab Zeppelin. So let's see in the next episode if it hits £1 million for a car.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. You're gonna bid for it, Brian? Got a few quid tucked away.
If it was a Matchbox Ferrari, Matt, maybe, but
yes, yeah, interesting. So moving on, documentaries.
yes,
There's a couple in the pipeline, aren't there?
there is indeed. So I'm a big fan of this band, and the fact that the band's documentary, they've entitled it "Hate to Love." So it's Nickelback. So Nickelback they've been going for 30 years now. So
Wow.
at the end of March, Nickelback, for 2 nights only, on I think it's the 27th and the 30th of March, worldwide, are going to be showing their a movie of their 30-year career. And never has there been a band who gets pillared and mocked as much as Nickelback do. I love it. I think they're great. I'm going to mention them later on in the show.
Yes.
But so Nickelback have got their documentary coming out. But the one I'm really excited about is the Bon Jovi docu-series, which will be coming out on Disney in April. It's got all of the band involved, and it's going to be to coincide with the 40th anniversary of the debut album from Bon Jovi, which will be warts and all. So that's going to be interesting to see how John tells the story, and how I'm really interested in how all the rest of the band talk about the journey they've had in Bon Jovi. So yeah, some great documentaries coming out over the next couple of months.
The Bon Jovi documentary will be quite good. I'm sure Richie Sambora will be in there, and John himself, and so on. In fact, talking about John Bon Jovi, he's come out recently and explained why he. But we talked about this again many episodes ago when he was struggling.
Yeah.
His singing style was very strange. So I think it was a couple of years ago when they were on tour, and he got quite a lot of criticism for it because he wasn't on top form. Anyway, it's transpired that he has been having treatment for an atrophied vocal cord. He was interviewed, and someone came out and said, "Look, what's up with your voice?" And he basically said, "Yeah, I've had problems with it. One of his vocal cords was completely wasted away, and he's had to have a plastic implant in its place.
Yeah,
and he won't go back on tour until he sounds great. So which is good, I suppose. He was really struggling. Do you remember? It was very strange the way he was singing, wasn't it?
It was, and the rest of the band are all great. You know, Phil X is in the band. You know, everybody in Bon Jovi. It's not just the 5 guys from New Jersey now. They're augmented with keyboard players and lots of good singers. But I remember Justin Hawkins had just started his podcast.
That's right.
And Justin's a great singer himself, and he was watching it as a signed up member of the lead singers union, going. John, I think he actually said John needs to go and see somebody about his vocal cords, and he's I think as you quite rightly say, there the plastic implant in his vocal cords, he's actually been in rehab with it for nearly 2 years now. So it sounds promising that it's going well. I know he's done a few little acoustic things vocally, but it's still not 100%, but it would be nice, because I think he came under a lot of criticism about his vocal performance. But yeah, if you're having major constructive surgery in your voice and that's how you make your living, well, you know, good luck to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on that story.
Yep. So, Matt, first up, a new Rock on the Block, we have Revolution Saints, which is an album from a project from Frontier Records.
That's another pound in the pot then, obviously, for you. Ka-ching.
First of the year. First Frontiers album. We should run a bingo thing, Matt. Says how many Frontiers albums is Brian going to discuss in 2024?
Well, you've said the word Frontiers 3 times now, so that's £3 in the pot already. You're saving up for that Peter Grant car, aren't you? I can tell.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna get Frontiers to pay for it.
Frontiers.
Yes, indeed.
So there's been so many great bands of late that have signed to that record label based in Italy. And a project which it's largely based around Dean Castronova from Journey. He's a drummer actually in Journey, but he's an amazing singer. So Revolution Saints is a project that was kicked off with Dean, Jack Blades from Night Ranger, and Doug Aldridge from Whitesnake and Dio. It was your standard 80s. It sounded very much like Journey, Bad English, that AOR, and then when the ballads came through in the album, you're sort of going, where does Dean stop and Steve Perry start? So they've done 4 albums with that lineup, and now they've got a 5th album which has come out, which is called Against the Winds. A little bit of a change in the lineup. So Dean is still there, carrying all of the vocals. But joining Dean on this project is Jeff Pilson, latterly of Dokken, now in Foreigner as the bass player, and Joel Hoekstra, who has been in Whitesnake, and he's also touring with Accept. So you'll see him at Steelhouse. He'll be playing guitar.
That's right.
That's going to look really funny. Joel with his big, nice, shiny teeth and blonde hair playing Accept's music.
That's right. And he was also in Night Ranger, wasn't he? We'll come on to Night Ranger later on.
He was indeed. So Revolution Saints have got their 5th album out called Against the Winds. There's some. It's back to mid-80s Journey, that sort of AOR of the 80s. And I have to say, I'm a massive fan of all 3 of the main players. But I think we've come to the end, Matthew, of for me anyway, the mashing together of artists when the material all sounds so dated. I really struggled. I love Dean's vocals. But all of the material, it just sounded very. There's a couple of good tracks on it, like Lost in Damnation is a really good. There's some upbeat, up-tempo tracks. The opening track, title track, Against the Winds, Changing My Mind. There's upbeat rockers on there, but it just all sounds the same. And I was really, I have to say, I was really disappointed. I thought having Jeff and Joel in the band might make it a bit more edgier, maybe a little bit more rockier. Like Joel's a fabulous guitar player, but I was really disappointed with this 5th album, and I just think maybe if they're never going to play it live, Matt, if they're not going to do anything vaguely different, something unplugged or acoustic, or I'm struggling to see where these projects are going to go. So I was very disappointed in Revolution Saints. Where were you at this as an album when you were listening to it?
Well, I tend to agree with a lot of what you said, actually. It does sound very mid-80s. It's got that kind of classic AOR feel about it. And the production is as you say, it's sort of straight from kind of Escape era Journey.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dean Casanova is a really good singer, but he does sound like a mid-range Steve Perry. And to be fair, I mean, we've said this in the context of Greta Van Fleet, for example. I mean, to be compared to Steve Perry is pretty good.
Yes.
He's very much like him. I mean, Steve Perry of Journey he's an amazing singer. We've said that many times. I thought the songs are very similar, as you say, all kind of mid-tempo rockers. There was very little light and shade. Joel Hoekstra's guitar playing stood out. I mean, he's an amazing guitarist.
Yeah.
And I thought he sounded great. So, thanks for recommending it, Revolution Saints Against the Winds. Have a listen, boys and girls, see what you think. I mean, there are, Journey and that whole sound has got many, many fans, of course. But yeah, I found it very derivative and very dated and in every way. I mean, Dean Crescenova, he must write because the amount of lyrics, check out the lyrics for each of these songs. It's just pages and pages of stuff, just word after word and word. Yeah, amazing. I mean, but so that was Against the Winds by Revolution Saints. We shall see how that goes for them in future.
Exactly.
Frontiers Records. You haven't mentioned Frontiers Records for a couple of minutes, Bri.
Okay.
I'm going to just mention them.
That's very true. And somebody who isn't signed to Frontiers Records, a little bit closer to home now, is I think he's actually from Leicestershire, is Jack J. Hutchinson, who has just released his latest album, Battles. And I know you were at the launch show, weren't you?
I was at one of the album launch gigs.
Yeah.
And I met Jack. He's a lovely guy. Actually, I bumped into him at a Maiden gig. Was it last year? I think it was. Just chatted to him in the bar, and he's a lovely guy. And Battles is the new album, and I think it's great. I really enjoy it. It's one of those albums that does take a few listens, Brian. Brian's shaking his head. You're shaking in your head in agreement, obviously. But I liked it. It's got he's a good guitarist. At times there was shades of he's a really good guitarist. There are shades of Gary Moore in there. And I have to say, he's got a sort of two sides to his singing style. In the lower range, he sounds great. There's a song called Road to Hell on here, which is it's quite a slow kind of sort of almost ballad, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And that kind of shows off his mid-range voice. His high range does sound a little bit sort of he's at the top of his range, let's say, on some of these songs. But he did, at times there was shades of Gary Moore. There's some light and shade here. I liked it. I get the impression, Brian, that you weren't quite so enthusiastic about it, but it's one of those albums that I think you have to give it a few listens before it sort of sinks in. And I think he benefits. He benefits on record with the ability to multi-track. There's multi-track guitars, and I think there's also multi-track vocals or double-track vocals. But live is just him playing guitar, singing, and bass and drums. So there's a three-piece, obviously. So there's if I'm honest, and Jack follows this podcast. If you're listening, Jack, you might benefit from a rhythm guitarist because there's a little bit of a kind of an empty feel, which I suppose is always the case when you've got a three-piece. I mean, bass and drums kind of filling in the space. But no, I liked it. Battles by Jack J. Hutchinson. I think I know where you're going to go with this, Brian. What do you think?
Or maybe not. So
it changed his mind.
No,
he was
I
shaking
haven't.
his head in agreement.
And here's the things that I agree with you on. He's a fantastic guitarist. The album, the actual songs themselves and the riffs, when you think of Constellations, Days Are Gone, two good opening tracks. For me, the standout tracks on the album are actually Road to Hell, Running on Empty. It just reminded me of when I was listening to the Green Day album. Do you remember in the last episode where I went, there was a couple of tracks, the tracks that opened the albums weren't as good as the middle of the album. And I feel the same way with Jack's album, whereas Road to Hell, Running on Empty has got an AC/DC swagger to it. It's got that, it's that real mid-tempo, earthy feel to it. and then and Rip It Up, which is a great track, and then there's an Aerosmith swagger to the that well-known title, Don't Let the Bleep
Bleepers
get you down.
Yeah.
So there's that the back end of the album's really, really strong. Where Jack and where Jack is singing a song without any effects. If you take the song Road to Hell, which is quite acoustic, there's a Bad Company feel to it. Mm-hmm. His singing mid-range, Matt, is lovely. There's no effects on it. Whereas the opening couple of tracks, the best way I can describe what Jack's sound was in my head was Liam Gallagher singing with Nickelback backing it. That was in my head. I've listened to the album two or three times. Yeah. It's got there's that snarly, nasally Liam Gallagher, that sort of it's that sound to me. But there was lots of processes and lots of production on his vocal.
Yeah.
And I didn't I didn't think his vocal was high enough on the mix for me. And I think he's a brilliant guitarist. I just think the production of his vocal was just a little bit overproduced for me. And that just let down the overall mix. Now, who am I to say? I'm just a listener and a punter, but the non-processed songs were amazing and his voice sounded great. So I thought I actually watched on YouTube the show in Islington at one of the launches, and the three-piece band and how he sounded live was great. And I think you're right. If he had a rhythm guitarist, just fill out the sound for him. But he's a great singer live, and the balance between his vocals and guitar live is brilliant. I just think on the album, I would have pushed his vocal a little bit higher in the mix. It just seemed to be mixed in with all of the rhythm section stuff. But great songs, great riffs. I just think vocally, just push it up on the mix and less processing on the vocal. But it's a good 7 for me. A good 7 out of 10, and he's getting a lot of play in Planet Rock, and he's been getting play on radio too. So, yeah,
and Scotland Rock's radio, of course. Don't forget them.
Exactly. So, yeah, good album.
Which brings us to the latest album by Blackberry Smoke called "Be Right Here." It's they've released. It's their 8th studio album. They've released 2 live albums and 5 EPs. However, considering they were formed in 2000. I suppose that's moderately productive. But new album all the same. What did you think, Bri? Like a bit of Blackberry Smoke, don't you?
We saw them at Ramblin' Man.
That's right. Yeah, they're regular visitors to these shores, aren't they?
Before listening to this album, I would have to say I've seen them live a couple of times, and yeah, they're good Southern rock. This album. And maybe Jack didn't stand a chance in this episode, because Be Right Here is probably one of the best albums I've listened to in such a long time.
Wow.
Yeah. Blackberry Smoke's album, it was... it just hit the right spot for me and maybe with the Black Crowes with a new promise of a new Black Crowes album coming out, but Blackberry Smoke have that wonderful mix, and it's just that lovely mix of Black Crowes, Allman Brothers, early Lynyrd Skynyrd, and it just was listening to it in the car, and I've been listening to it for a couple of days now. It's just swampy, greasy, good old rock and roll, bourbon soaked. It was like you're in Georgia, you're listening to them, Matt. You could be in a bar and they'd be sitting there, and whether they're playing the O2 in London or a bar in Georgia, that's how they would sound. And the songs, the standout tracks for me in this album, Hammering the Nail is the second track album, which is really, really good. Azalea, which is an acoustic ballad, shades of Going to California in it. Don't mind if I do. If you picture the period where the Stones are getting into country music and hanging out with Graham Parsons and the whole Laurel Canyon type feel to it. But the gem of the album, Matt, for me is, and I'll be surprised at the end of the year this isn't in one of my songs of the year, is Other Side of the Light is the standout track for me. It's acoustic, great singing. Charlie's never going to be singing Still of the Night or, screaming up there like Rob Halford, but he knows his voice and he just emotes very, very well. It's to me, it's the perfect, when I was listening to it, I was kind of going, when I heard the Southern Harmony and Musical Companion, which was the second album of the Black Crowes, this album just sits as a nice companion to that afterwards. I loved it. I genuinely, it's not raw and edgy. It's not like Dirty Honey or whatever, but yeah, I loved it, Matt. It's a solid 9 out of 10 from me.
Very good.
How about you?
Very good. Yeah, well, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a good album. I'm not quite as bowled over as you were, but I'm not the biggest fan of that sort of southern rock sort of style of music, but it's quite a nice kind of you can dance to it. That's the good thing about southern rock, particularly Blackberry Smoke. It's good time music on the whole. As you say, you could dance to it in a bar, you could dance to it wherever. And there are some clever songs like The Hammer and the Nail.
Yeah.
Check out the lyrics to that. It's very clever.
Yeah.
Azalea is probably my favourite song on the album. But you're right, The Other Side of the Light is good. A Little Bit Crazy is a good old boogie infused rocker. Sort of 12-bar blues sort of vibe to it. But yeah, check it out. It's a really, really good album. And I think it will take them to another level. Good on them. But yeah, it's well worth checking out. The new album from Blackberry Smoke. Be right here. So, Brian, we have arrived at the letter N in the A to Z of Ra. So, N, I think no better place to start than Nirvana. Formed in 1987, and I think they must be one of the last 30, 40 years, one of the most influential bands there's been. I mean, they were instrumental in the rise of grunge, turned the tables, and pretty much killed off single-handedly, killed off hair metal with Smells Like Teen Spirit, which even now sounds great. If you stick that on nice and loud, Dave Grohl's battering of the drums. He wasn't the original drummer actually of Nirvana. Chad
eighth or something, wasn't he?
Well, I think Chad Channing played on the first album by Nirvana, but then of course there's essentially Dave Grohl is synonymous with Nirvana, but they were on Sub Pop, which is again one of those kind of classic grunge labels. Butch Vig produced their album, and if you ever see the classic album TV series where they focused on Nevermind, it's fascinating the way that Butch Vig produced Kurt Cobain through the album, using references to John Lennon to kind of coax performances out of him and so on. But I mean, fantastic. And Nevermind, of course, one of the kind of classic albums, as I said, in the letter N. And just a turning point really for modern rock music. And still, it's a great album. And the MTV Unplugged album's good. In Utero, I quite like In Utero. It's not quite as lauded as Nevermind, but wow, I mean, what a legacy, what a band. And sadly, of course, 1994, it all ended when Kurt Cobain sadly killed himself. But brilliant. What a legacy, and iconic, really, the image of Kurt Cobain as we know. So that was Nirvana. You remember them? Were you at university, I presume,
I was, yeah.
Through the 90s into the 15 years you were there, of course, let's remind everyone.
I went through the whole of Brit. I went through the grunge Britpop and probably...
Well, you went through Nwabum, you went through hair metal, you went through grunge, you went through Brit rock, you went through them all.
The Millennium as well, Matt. I was there.
Absolutely. The whole lot. Yes, indeed. And equally as influential was Nwabum, the new wave of British heavy metal, which I remember fondly. I was in my sort of formative years at the kind of peak of, what are your formative years? I was 15, 16, around the Nwabum sort of 1979, 80 era. And I always think it was sort of in a way spawned by punk, in that, there were a lot of bands, and punk had largely kind of collapsed by 1979. There was the kind of post-punk new wave type stuff. But the idea that you could basically kind of, do it yourself, put your own tapes together, demo tapes or singles or whatever. Famously, Iron Maiden did one, Def Leppard did one, Diamond Head did a whole album, demo album, the legendary White Album. Again, the kind of do-it-yourself thing was spawned by, I think, my own personal view, was spawned by punk. And also the fact that, there was a kind of a sense that the dinosaurs, as they were sort of classified as, the Genesis, Led Zepp, Pink Floyd, had kind of run their course. I mean, poor Robert Plant was only about 30 when Led Zepp broke out, and he was being called an old man of rock, as it were. But yeah, it was a term actually that was coined by Alan Lewis, the editor of Sounds magazine, which again was an iconic magazine we used to read back in the late 70s and 80s. We talked about Sounds. It was relating to a gig in 1979. I remember it vaguely being the headline, unless I kind of remember it sort of subsequently. But I think it was Angel Witch. I think it was Angel Witch, Iron Maiden, and Samson, I think, were the three bands on this bill. Possibly at the Music Machine in London. And they just coined the term the new wave of British heavy metal, and it kind of springboarded from there. Malcolm Macmillan, in his book, the Nwabum Encyclopedia, suggests there were, at the peak, there were 400 Nwabum bands in existence, and only a handful really made it: Saxon, Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, who probably, would deny the fact that we're part of it, and they were formed in, the mid-70s anyway. Certainly Maiden distanced themselves, and so did Def Leppard, but still an amazing phenomenon. And of course, as sort of being the springboard for Megadeth, Metallica, and, many other bands subsequently. So the great Nwabum era, I remember it fondly, of course. Remember that, Brian?
Not really for me. I was a little bit younger for that, but...
you were packing for university, though.
I was packing for university at that point in my nappies.
You were in 1979. You'd have been what, 10
I was 10 years old. I was 10 years
old.
But when you think of when you devour the magazines that I did, in the early 80s, and then the encyclopedias, you think of bands. I know about the Tigers of Pantang. But I know about Tigers of Pantang because that's where John Sykes came from before he joined Thin Lizzy.
That's right.
I know about White Spirit because White Spirit was the band that I think Yannick Gers was in before he joined Gillan. I am completely in agreement with you that it really was the hard rock, the heavy metal guys' sort of reaction to punk, because you listen to that first Iron Maiden album, there's punk elements to it. It's shorter songs. It's not Tales of Topographic Oceans, fourth side. It's quite aggressive. But then you think of Venom, some of the bands that maybe started in the early 80s. For a lot of people, Venom created thrash metal, black metal. So it was such an influential period of time, Nwabum.
Absolutely.
Deserves to be spoken about.
Indeed. Well, we just did. And very eloquently, I'd like to think. So
What else we got? You mentioned Nickelback earlier, the band that people love to hate. I've never really worked out why they're hated. I thought it was triggered by the song Rockstar, which I don't think it was particularly autobiographical. It was essentially just kind of, it was a tongue-in-cheek song. But I think since then they've got pelters, as you said earlier.
I think they're great.
Certainly they have props as well as pelters. But yeah, a lot of people love them, and apparently I've never seen them, but apparently they're brilliant live.
I've seen them a couple of times. I've been to see. They put on a great show. They're in whenever you see them live, Matt. They're in that they can compete with the Alter Bridges of this world at that that sort of great
Stadium
melodic
rock level.
stadium rock level. How You Remind Me is just
brilliant.
an absolutely fantastic song. Photograph, great band.
Yeah, done some good songs. As I say, we'll get to the bottom of why they're hated. But not by everyone, as I say. Another good band, and I've seen a couple of times, Night Ranger. Yeah, I love Night Ranger. As you mentioned earlier, Joel Hoekstra has been in Night Ranger.
Yes.
And then he joined Whitesnake, and David Coverdale said to him, no, take those songs away. They sound a bit too much like Night Ranger when they were trying to work out whatever album would have been. But I remember the Brad Gillis era. He's still with them, Brad Gillis, of course. Jack Blades.
Kelly Keegy.
And Kelly Keegy, of course. Synonymous with those kind of classic American-style big rock numbers. I love You Can Still Rock in America. I mean, that's an anthem. And, of course, Sister Christian, which is about Kelly Keegy's sister, Christina, I think her name is.
I didn't know that.
Was. Yeah. He wrote it about hers. Again, sort of autobiographical when they were growing up. But he obviously changed it from Christina to Christian because it scans better. Slightly more mysterious than Sister Christina. Yeah, Night Ranger. If you get a chance to see them, they're excellent. Brad Gillis, I mean, he's an amazing guitarist, isn't he?
Yeah, well, let me come to you the point of, if you get a chance to see them, go and see them. Yes, because we always know what the UK tour of Night Ranger is, Matthew.
Yes, that's true. Well, what can I say? There's a lot of people live in the London area. It's a big market. Come on.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Go and see Night Ranger on their UK tour in the Shepherd Bush Empire in London.
That's right.
On a Tuesday rainy night.
Indeed. Someone who hasn't toured here for a long, long time is Mr. Theodore Anthony Nugent, a.k.a. Ted Nugent. Mad as a box of frogs, of course. But did some great stuff in the 70s. His peak was probably the 70s after he left the Amboy Dukes.
Yeah.
Cat Scratch Fever is a great album. I've got that somewhere, actually. Could have put that down as a hidden gem. Free for All, good stuff. Weekend Warriors. That kind of late 70s, I think, into the 80s was his purple patch. Like a bit of Ted, Uncle Ted. Right.
Ted's brilliant. His live band, I think he did one of his live albums that he did, his backing band, he had Marco Mendoza, and I think he's also had Tommy Aldridge playing on drums with them as well too.
More than likely, yeah. Well, we mustn't forget that he's done some brilliant live albums. And, of course, one of the greatest live album titles, Intensities in 10 Cities. We love that one. And Double Live Gonzo was his earlier album. But, yeah, check out Intensities in 10 Cities. I love that. That's one of my favourite rock albums ever. Who else you got? John Norum, your man.
Yeah, I have to call it. It's just an excuse for me to talk about John Norum, who was the original guitarist in Europe, famously.
Still with them. Still with them.
Well, he is still with them, but famously, whenever the final countdown took off, all around the world, John decided to step back. So Key Markello came in, and famously all of the TV that whenever they played Top of the Pops Christmas edition, you had Key Markello on the guitar playing away. So John just backed away from all of that. But John, in his own right, after leaving Europe, he He put he got a solo contract, put a great solo debut album together called Total Control. He worked with Glenn Hughes, and he also joined Dokken for a while. And Dokken were quite a heavy band. And one of the things that I love about John is massive Thin Lizzy fan, played with various members of Lizzy. Personally, I would have loved him to have joined one of the later incarnations of Thin Lizzy. He's such a great guitar player, and he is the current owner of one of Gary Moore's famous white Stratocasters. So big fan, and he's got one of Gary's Strats. So John Norum, fabulous, and still playing amazing as well.
So we've got to mention the great Stevie Nicks, synonymous, one of the voices of Fleetwood Mac, of course.
Yeah.
And of course, it had a resurgence, I think, with The Edge of 17 when it was in School of Rock, which we've mentioned many times. It's a classic scene in School of Rock, isn't it, when they're singing Edge of 17. Graham Nash, of course, part of Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young. Amazing singer. And as you touched on earlier, part of that Laurel Canyon kind of group, although I think he was from Manchester originally.
Played sang in the Hollies. He was.
I know.
Yeah.
A hugely underrated band, as far as I'm concerned, and we have to put some Hollies on the playlist because some of their stuff is just amazing. That sort of kind of paved the way in a way for the harmonies that were Crosby, Stills and Nash. Albums-wise, Night of the Opera by Queen. I think that's, for a lot of people, one of the greatest albums ever. I mean, you look down the track listing there. Love of My Life, Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, Love of My Car, one of your particular favourites, Brian. You are in love with your little car, aren't you?
I am indeed. Yeah. I am. My little hairdresser car. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a cool little car there. No Sleep Till Hammersmith by the mighty Motorhead. We touched upon them last time. We'll stick a bunch of songs from No Sleep, one of the greatest live albums ever. Not the greatest, of course, we know what that is, but one of the greatest live albums ever. Number of the Beast by the mighty Iron Maiden. So I'm rattling through these, Brian. Feel free to chip in. Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. The first album to feature Bruce Dickinson, and one of the greatest Maiden albums, I think. Some amazing songs on there. Prisoners on there, Children of the Damned, and of course the title track, Run to the Hills is on there, and so on. What you got for us, Brian? Any others in the letter N?
No.
No? We covered it, have we?
We have. You've done really well in N's.
Well, let's mention finally Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. That's a great song.
It is.
And Night Games by Graham Bonnet. Love that song. Just after he left. I think he left Rainbow by then, but Cozy Powell's on it, Don Airey's on it. Essentially a rainbow song, but without Richard Blackmore. But there you go. That was the letter N.
Fabulous.
Next time, O. That'll be fun. I think we'll have to start working on that now.
Exactly, yeah.
So that brings us, Brian, to
Hidden Gems Eyes.
What have you got for us this time, Brian?
I have got for this time one of the hot tickets or hot guitarists that was about around 1989 and 90 was a guitarist called Stevie Salas.
Right.
So Stevie Salas, Mick Jagger had him in his solo band. Rod Stewart famously hired the Stevie Salas band to go out on tour to support his Out of Order tour. His first solo album is called Color Code. And it's that perfect sort of fusion of funk, metal, soul, bit of Prince. And when I was reading the Kerrang book that you bought me for Christmas, and I was just going through, Kerrang really championed Stevie, and a great guitar player. And I just went back and listened to the album, and I thought it was a commercial disaster in America. He supported Joe Satriani when Joe was just breaking on his sort of first solo tour, and the record company got behind Stevie, and it just didn't work out for him. But go and listen to The album itself, Color Code, some great tracks on it. Blind, the lead off track, which was the single, The Harder They Come. It's just a great album, Matt. So my hidden gem for this episode is Stevie Salas, Color Code. What have you got?
Well, I've got a book actually, and I have it right here, as if by magic. So it's a book called Uncommon People, and it's written by David Hepworth. Now, David Hepworth is a very well-respected rock journalist in the UK. He was involved in the presentation of, I remember, of Live Aid back in 1985. He was working for the BBC then. Remember that?
He was famously, he was the one where they were, whenever Bob Geldof lost the plot,
yes,
it was when David Hepworth was saying, why don't we give out the telephone and why don't we give out the addresses now to write into? And that's where Bob went, get on the phone.
Yeah, send us your bleeping money. Yes, indeed. Yes, you'd probably be well remembered for that little episode. But this book is called, as there's Uncommon People: The Rise and Fall of Rock Stars, and basically charts essentially rock stars, music stars, pop stars through the ages. Jerry Lee Lewis, Hank Marvin, the Beatles, of course, the Beach Boys, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan, Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and so on. It's a fascinating read. Talks about their it's kind of behind the scenes read, and it's a chapter on each of the rock stars, and well worth a read. He's a really good writer, got a really good style about him. I read his book 1971, which is all about the year 1971. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, really good book. So check out Uncommon People by David Hepworth. You read a few books. You read one book a year, don't you, Brian? You should read this one. Uncommon. I'm coming up to see you soon. I'll bring this with me. You can have this. It's very copy. So that's it. We're at the end of episode 61, Brian.
We are now. Boom. Well done.
What do you think? Enjoy that?
I did indeed.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. Should we do it again next time?
We have to, because we've got to finish the rest of the alphabet.
Oh, that's true, of course, yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes, how could I forget? Well, look, thanks for listening, everyone. As always, we appreciate it. Check us out online at Facebook. Listen to us on Scotland Rocks Radio every third Tuesday, of course. Thanks to them for having us on. Please subscribe on YouTube. I think, as Brian said, if we get like a billion listeners, we get about 37 pence each. So that'll be good. So we're well on the way to our first 37 pence.
Global
each.
domination.
Indeed. Indeed. But yeah, just take care of yourselves, and we'll see you for episode 62, won't we, Brian?
We will indeed. Thanks, everybody. Rock on.
Those Bad Pod, we salute you, is a Made in Rogers production.